between the First and Second World Wars. The world witnessed unprecedented advancements in the field of military communications and cryptography. Global superpowers developed massive, complex machinery under the bold assumption that their codes were mathematically unbreakable. From Germany's famed Enigma machine to Japan's intricate diplomatic and naval ciphers, nations poured millions of dollars into safeguarding their top-secret transmissions. Yet, as World War II escalated into a brutal global conflict, the United States military faced a devastating tactical crisis in the Pacific theater that threatened to dismantle their entire war effort. Japanese intelligence possessed some of the most gifted, relentless cryptanalysts in human history. They were intercepting, decoding, and translating American radio signals with terrifying speed. Every time American forces organized an amphibious assault, mapped out artillery coordinates, or ordered troop movements, Japanese intelligence cracked the transmission within minutes and prepared lethal ambushes. Thousands of Marines were walking straight into slaughter. The American High Command desperately needed a military code that was lightning fast to transmit on the battlefield and utterly impossible for any human mind or machine to decipher. The solution to this impossible dilemma did not come from elite mathematicians, secret laboratories, or advanced computing machines. It came from the unlikeliest of places, a long-oppressed Native American tribe living on a reservation in the American Southwest, the Navajo Nation. The catalyst for this revolutionary idea was a man named Philip Johnston. Raised on the Navajo reservation as the son of a missionary, Johnston was one of the extremely rare non-Navajo individuals who grew up speaking the language fluently. As the war raged on and the U.S. Marine Corps searched frantically for a secure communication method, Johnston realized that the Navajo language possessed structural qualities that made it a natural cryptographic fortress. He approached senior officers of the Marine Corps with an unheard-of proposal: recruit native Navajo speakers to create a living military code. Initial reactions were met with deep skepticism and outright dismissal by traditional military brass. However, Johnston persuaded commanders to allow a live, controlled demonstration. He brought several Navajo men into a military facility, placed them in separate rooms, and gave them a complex military message to encode, transmit via radio, and decode back into English. Standard military cipher machines of the era required over 30 minutes to process a short message. The Navajo volunteers executed the entire task flawlessly in less than 20 seconds, astounded by what they had just witnessed. The Marine Corps leadership immediately authorized a pilot program, ordering the immediate recruitment of 29 Navajo men. History would remember these visionaries as the first 29, the founding architects of the most successful and unbreakable code in military history. What made the Navajo language an impenetrable wall for enemy intelligence was its complete isolation from other global linguistic families. It was entirely unwritten, possessing no alphabet, no written symbols, no dictionaries, and no formal grammar texts. The language existed solely through oral tradition, passed down through generations by word of mouth. Its tonal nuances, complex syntax, and unique vocal pitches were so radically different from Indo-European or Asian languages that anyone who was not a native speaker raised in the culture found it virtually impossible to comprehend. To an untrained Japanese cryptanalyst listening over a static-heavy radio frequency. The sounds did not even resemble human speech. They sounded like an unrecognizable series of guttural noises or animal calls. However, simply speaking their native language was not enough to win a war. The recruits had to build a structured, standardized military code embedded within their language to represent modern warfare concepts. Gathered at Camp Pendleton, these 29 men worked day and night to construct a dual-layer code. Because traditional Navajo vocabulary lacked terms for modern military hardware, they adapted descriptive, nature-based metaphors. A fighter jet became Dahiti-Hai, the Navajo word for a hummingbird. A bomber plane was designated as Jaysho, meaning buzzard. A submarine was transformed into Beshlo, which translates directly to ironfish to handle names of specific geographic locations. Commanders and arbitrary military terms. They constructed a phonetic alphabet system using Navajo words for common animals, plants, and objects. If an operator needed to spell out a location, starting with the letter A, they would use the Navajo word for apple, chihe. For B, they used shush, meaning bear. This created a complex, multi-tiered system that was virtually impossible to reverse engineer. But the most formidable aspect of the Navajo Code was its requirement for total mental retention. Nothing was allowed to be written down on paper or recorded in field manuals that could be captured on the battlefield. Every single code talker had to memorize hundreds of terms, alternative phonetic words, and complex transmission protocols entirely in their heads. Through relentless, exhausting military drills, these young men transformed their minds into human processing machines. Under intense pressure, amidst the roar of artillery and the spray of bullets, they could process, translate, and transmit complex combat orders from memory in seconds. Once their rigorous training was complete, the code talkers were bound by strict military secrecy. They were forbidden from telling anyone, including their own families and parents, about the true nature of their assignment. Bound by an oath of silence, they were shipped out to the treacherous, blood-soaked islands of the Pacific, where Japanese forces were waiting. The Pacific Theater was a brutal, unforgiving nightmare of dense jungles, disease-ridden swamps, scorching heat, and relentless guerrilla warfare. Japanese forces were deeply dug into complex underground bunker networks and were fiercely determined to fight to the absolute last man. In this chaotic environment, reliable communication was the single most critical factor between victory and utter annihilation. If an infantry unit lost contact with its artillery support or naval bombardment ships, hundreds of men could be wiped out in a matter of moments. When the Navajo Code Talkers arrived on frontline islands such as Guadalcanal, Bougainville, Tarawa, and Peleliu, their impact on the war effort was immediate and transformative. Amidst the chaos of battle, with mortar shells detonating around them, blinding smoke filling the air, and sniper fire raining down from the canopy, the code talkers sat with heavy radio packs strapped to their backs, calmly transmitting life-saving tactical data across the island networks. Japanese intelligence listening posts intercepted these radio waves almost instantly. Japan had deployed their absolute finest codebreakers, experts who had effortlessly cracked high-level British and American ciphers throughout the war. Yet, when confronted with the Navajo transmissions, their advanced cryptanalytic methods collapsed completely. Japanese cryptanalysts spent countless hours recording, analyzing, and attempting to dissect the mysterious broadcasts. They were utterly baffled, unable to determine whether they were listening to a mathematically generated machine code, an obscure regional dialect, or something else entirely. In a desperate attempt to break the barrier, Japanese forces brutally tortured a captured American soldier, forcing him to listen to recorded Navajo transmissions in an attempt to force a translation. The soldier, having never heard the Navajo language in his life, could only tell his captors in total honesty that the sounds made no sense to him whatsoever. It marked one of the most humiliating intelligence failures in Japanese military history. The enemy was forced to watch American forces coordinate complex, large-scale tactical maneuvers openly over public radio frequencies, entirely helpless to stop them. The speed of the Navajo operators gave the U.S. military a staggering tactical advantage. Where mechanical encryption devices required 30 to 45 minutes to encode, transmit, and decipher a 3-line message, a pair of Navajo Code Talkers could complete the exact same task in less than 30 seconds with absolute accuracy. The crowning achievement of the Navajo Code Talkers unfolded during the legendary and terrifying Battle of Iwo Jima. The volcanic island of Iwo Jima was a heavily fortified fortress, honeycombed with miles of hidden tunnels, pillboxes, and artillery emplacements. The amphibious assault resulted in some of the fiercest, most concentrated combat of the entire war. During the first 48 hours of the landing alone, 6 Navajo Code Talkers worked around the clock without a single moment of sleep, operating under relentless bombardment. These 6 men successfully transmitted over 800 critical military messages without making a single error. A single mistake in coordinates could have resulted in friendly fire disasters or the loss of crucial beachheads. Yet their execution was flawless. Major Howard Connor, the senior signal officer for the 5th Marine Division at Iwo Jima, later declared to the press that if it were not for the Navajo Code Talkers, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima. Their ability to deliver instantaneous, error-free field intelligence enabled American forces to pinpoint enemy strongholds, direct naval gunfire, and secure the island. Despite their heroic contributions, the Code Talkers faced a unique and terrifying danger on the battlefield: friendly fire. With their dark complexions, dark hair, and distinct facial features, Navajo soldiers bore a physical resemblance to Japanese troops. In the high-stress, chaotic fog of war, American infantrymen frequently mistook their own Code Talkers for enemy infiltrators or Japanese soldiers who had stolen American uniforms. To protect these invaluable men from being shot by their own troops, the Marine Corps assigned personal bodyguards to each Code Talker. The primary duty of these bodyguards was to protect the Navajo soldiers from ambient battlefield hazards and friendly fire. However, there was a dark, unspoken protocol attached to this assignment. The bodyguards were under strict, classified orders that if a Code Talker was in imminent danger of being captured by Japanese forces, the bodyguard was to execute the Code Talker to prevent the code from ever falling into enemy hands. The Navajo operators carried out their duties with extraordinary courage, knowing that they faced death not only from the enemy in front of them, but potentially from the very men assigned to protect them. When World War II finally concluded in 1945, following the Japanese surrender. The Navajo Code stood as the only military code in modern history that was never broken by an enemy power. It was a triumph of unmatched proportion. Yet the return home for these veterans was marked by profound injustice and silence. Because their living code was so extraordinarily effective, the United States Department of Defense deemed it a vital military asset that had to be preserved for potential future conflicts. Consequently, the entire operation was classified as top secret. Upon returning home, the Code Talkers were strictly forbidden from discussing their service, their tactics, or their achievements with anyone, including their wives, children, and fellow tribal members. While other American veterans were greeted with grand parades, public honors, and medals, the Navajo Code Talkers slipped quietly back into their reservations, returning to lives of poverty and systemic discrimination. For 23 years, their heroic sacrifice remained completely unknown to the public, hidden under the dark veil of military secrecy. Finally, in 1968, the U.S. government officially declassified the Navajo Code Talker program, allowing the truth to emerge into the light. The world was stunned to learn that the ultimate secret weapon behind the Allied victory in the Pacific was not a high-tech machine, but the ancient, unwritten language of a Native American tribe that the government had spent decades trying to erase. In the year 2001, decades after the war ended, the surviving Navajo Code Talkers were formally invited to Washington, D.C., where they were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor in the United States. The story of the Navajo Code Talkers is far more than a chronicle of military strategy or battlefield communications. It stands as a timeless testament to human resilience, the power of cultural heritage, and unwavering patriotism. They proved to the world that sometimes the most invincible weapon a nation possesses is not found in complex technology, but in the enduring power of its ancient roots.